Overwatch Season 3 did not just add a new hero. That is the easy version of the story. Shion is flashy. She is fast. She has the motorcycle. She has the kind of kit that instantly pulls attention because it looks built for highlight clips. But the real question is not whether Shion looks cool. The real question is what happens to the rest of the game when a hero like this enters the system at the same time Blizzard is changing tanks, sustain, gadgets, stadium rules, and how teams prepare around hero pools. That is where the patch gets interesting. Because Season 3 does not feel like a simple content drop. It feels like a pressure test on the front line. If Shion adds more mobility and more flank pressure, then tanks cannot just stand still and hold space the same way. If new gadgets give teams more tools against flyers and sustain heavy setups, then some heroes lose safety they used to rely on. If defensive windows get shorter, then fights may become less about holding forever and more about timing, positioning, and who forces cooldowns first. So the headline is Shion, but the ripple is the front line. And that is what this video is about. Overwatch Season 3, Reign of Talon, went live on June 16th. It added Shion as a new damage hero, Neon Junction as a new hybrid map, a large set of hero changes, new gadgets, stadium updates, and roster and ban system changes. That is a lot on paper. But GamingRealm is not here to read patch notes out loud. The point is to ask what those changes do next. What changes for tanks? What changes for damage players? What changes for supports? What changes in stadium? And what kind of meta does this patch start rewarding if these pieces actually connect? Start with Shion. Based on the official reveal materials, Shion is an aggressive damage hero built around movement, pressure, and style. She uses dual pistols with a 3-round firing cadence. She has omnidirectional dashes that let her move through fights from multiple angles. Her evade dash can briefly give overhealth. She can ride a motorcycle into the battlefield and then turn that bike into a projectile weapon. Even before the numbers settle, the fantasy is clear. This is not a slow damage hero. This is not a hero that wants to stand in one lane and trade forever. Shion is built to create pressure from motion. And that matters because Overwatch frontlines live and die by how stable the fight feels. A tank wants to know where pressure is coming from. A support wants to know which angle needs healing. A damage player wants to know when the enemy team is forced to look away. A hero with this much movement creates stress because the fight can suddenly happen from somewhere else. That does not automatically mean stationary tanks are dead. That would be too strong without ranked data. But it does mean the game may start asking tanks a harder question. Can you hold space while the enemy damage line moves around you? And that is where the rest of the patch matters, because Shion is not arriving alone. Season 3 also touches tank durability, defensive windows, sustained tools, and counter gadgets. That combination is the real ripple. Look at the frontline changes. Reinhardt gets a stronger fire strike with more damage and faster projectile speed. Zarya keeps energy longer because her energy degeneration rate drops. Ramatra gets more value from Relentless Form and stronger nanite repair healing. Those are not all tank nerfs. Some tanks are getting better tools, but the patch also tightens some defensive value. Hazard has a shorter spike guard duration. D.Va sees a lower shield conversion value on a major perk. Doomfist has a shorter power matrix duration. Reaper loses base health and some movement speed from Lingering Wraith. Then the item and gadget layer adds more pressure. Elsaka Suppressor has stronger healing reduction. Vortex Vial can pull enemies downward, which matters for flyers. Siphon Snippet brings knockback, healing reduction, and overhealth gain. That creates a very specific kind of patch direction. It is not just about one hero being stronger. It is about giving players more answers to sustain, more answers to flyers, more pressure on defensive timing, more punishment when a frontline gets too comfortable. This is why the patch can ripple harder than it first looks. A single tank number change is one thing, but when you combine mobile damage pressure, shorter defensive windows, new anti-flyer tools, stronger healing reduction, and stadium build changes, the game starts rewarding something different. It starts rewarding adaptation, not just durability, not just standing in the same place, not just waiting for the enemy team to walk into you. The first major ripple is tank positioning. If Shion creates pressure from odd angles, and if defensive tools have slightly tighter windows, tanks have to be more active with where they stand and when they commit. A tank that holds space well will still matter, but the kind of space being held may change. Instead of one stable front line, fights may become more about flexible pressure points. Where is Shion going? Where is the flyer? Where is the support line exposed? Where is the gadget coming from? Who is forced to turn first? That kind of game rewards tanks who can manage space without over-relying on one long defensive window. The second ripple is flyer safety. Vortex Vial is important because it gives players a direct answer to aerial positioning. That does not mean every flying hero suddenly disappears, but it does mean unchecked air control becomes riskier. If flyers can be pulled downward more reliably, then flying heroes may need more support, better timing, or cleaner positioning before taking aggressive angles. That changes how damage players choose fights. It also changes how supports prepare to protect them. The third ripple is Stadium. This might be the part people underrate. Grouping restrictions were removed. Hero power and item paths were reworked. Preferred hero displays and ban slots change how teams signal and deny options. That makes Stadium less about copying one solve setup and more about testing build paths. Players who adapt fast may gain value immediately. Players who stay locked into old builds may feel the patch harder than expected. So, what does Season 3 start rewarding? Cautiously, because we still need ranked data, it looks like this patch may reward faster map pressure, stronger cooldown tracking, better gadget timing, and more flexible tank play. The biggest winner may not be one single hero. The biggest winner might be the player who understands how fights are changing. Damage players who can use mobility to create pressure without feeding should gain value. Supports who can survive shifting angles and manage resources carefully should matter more. Tanks who can move, adjust, track cooldowns, and understand when the front line is actually safe may separate themselves from tanks who only rely on raw durability. And in Stadium, flexible builders may get ahead of players still waiting for someone else to solve the patch. That is the real story. Shion is the face of Season 3, but the frontline ripple is what could define it. A flashy new hero gets people to click on the patch. The meta shift happens when every role has to respond. So the question is not just, is Shion strong? The better question is, what does Shion force the rest of the game to become? If Season 3 plays out the way these changes suggest, Overwatch could move toward a faster, more adaptive meta where stationary comfort matters less, counter tools matter more, and frontline stability depends on timing instead of just durability. That does not mean every tank is doomed. It means tanks may have to work differently, and that is the kind of patch ripple worth watching. Because sometimes the biggest change in a patch is not the number that gets adjusted, it is the way every other player has to move after that number changes.